Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out to this meeting of the Housing Committee. My name is Sean Rill. I'm the chair of the Housing Committee, and we are trying to organize and facilitate the creation of a housing trust. It's something that's what we're here for and hoping to do today. I guess I'm going to talk a little bit about the Housing Committee for anybody who's curious. First, we were organized by the Select Board to help implement the recommendations that came from the Housing for Harpswell report that was put together by the Affordable Housing Working Group in town over between, I think, 2020 and 2024. And within our sort of like mission, we're basically trying to help residents increase opportunities for attainable housing in town, which in my mind is a really important concern for Harpswell. Another one of our missions is to engage the community in developing and implementing attainable housing opportunities. That's kind of what we're doing here today. Throughout the past year, we've also been working on building out information for how you might be able to build an ADU, which is an option that might get some housing in town. We have a flyer that we've put together and got some good information on how to do that. It's in the back corner there. And we will also be posting links to all of the materials that we have in person in the Zoom chat. And people who are attending via Zoom, if you are interested in digitally signing up in our sign-up sheet, please drop your name and contact information into the chat. That would be super helpful. So I guess that's basically the intro of the Housing Committee. We've been trying to figure out where we have opportunities in town to get some more people some housing. This housing trust, or the proposal for a housing trust, is one of the opportunities that I'm excited about that we've identified. I'm gonna hand it over to another committee member and State Rep Cheryl Golick to talk about why we need housing in town. What do you want me to do with that, Bob?
Have it passed around.
Great.
Hello, I'm Cheryl Golick. I'm also the State House representative for District 99, which covers all of Harpswell and part of Brunswick. I joined the Housing Committee out of listening for the last 4 years to people in our community and our town on the importance of housing. So I felt like I could bring what I had heard at the doors, to the table here.
Cheryl, you want to lift your microphone a little closer to your mouth?
How about a...
Oh, that's much.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to touch on some key housing initiatives that we have done at the State House. I promised I'd stay within 5 minutes, so I'm going to go through this, but there is a flyer back there, key initiatives, that has them labeled out. So if anybody has any questions afterwards about them or wants information, you can email me and I'll get it back to you. So what I'm going to say is Maine faces a significant housing crisis, with projections indicating a need for more than 84,000 additional housing units by 2030. In response, the 132nd Maine Legislature in the first session in collaboration with Governor Mills, has passed 22 bills aimed at addressing housing affordability, accessibility, and supply across the state. I have just a small snapshot of these achievements. Like I said, they're printed up there for any of you who'd like to view them. I want to mention that there was also a report titled A Roadmap for the Future Housing Production in Maine, which was released in January 2025. I did not bring that because it's like close to 50 pages long, but I believe it's going to be linked onto our Housing Committee page for people to be able to see and access. So to talk a little bit about an overview of those 22 housing bills, the passage of 22 housing-related bills represents a robust legislative effort to tackle Maine's housing shortage. These initiatives collectively advanced affordable housing, reform zoning and land use policies, protect vulnerable residents, and enhance support systems for those facing housing insecurity. The following, I'll give you a brief overview of some key components and implications of this bill. Excuse me, my tongue's just not working right today. Some of the initiatives are a landmark achievement was created, was the creation of dedication of revenue sources for affordable housing. This funding stream ensures ongoing investment in the development and preservation of affordable units, targeting both urban and rural communities. Additionally, appropriations were allocated to expand affordable housing programs, including increased support for first-time homebuyers and low-income renters. Zoning and land use reforms. Several bills focused on modernizing zoning laws and land use policies to promote housing development. Reforms included enabling higher density housing in areas with existing infrastructure, reducing regulatory barriers for multifamily and accessory dwelling units, and incentivizing local governments to adopt pro-housing land use practices. These changes aim to make it easier for developers and communities to create new housing opportunities. One of the other things that we really worked a lot on was mobile home park protections and preservation. Mobile home parks protection and preservation. By recognizing the importance of the mobile home parks as affordable housing options in our state, if we lose these parks, we basically have lost the last of our continuous affordable housing units, so it's really important. The legislature enacted protections to preserve these communities. New safeguards were established to prevent displacement of residents, ensure fair treatment during park sales or redevelopment, and promote residents' ownership opportunities. For emergency shelter funding and rent supports, we worked on addressing immediate needs. For emergency shelter funding was increased, supporting organizations that provide housing for individuals experiencing homelessness. Additionally, expanded rent support programs now offer greater assistance to low-income households, helping prevent evictions and housing instability. Tax credit improvements, and we created some housing data collection. Legislation improved the effectiveness of existing housing tax credit programs by streamlining application processes and increasing the value of credits available for affordable housing projects. The state also launched a new system for housing data collection, enabling better tracking of supply, demand, and affordability trends to inform future policy decisions. The legislature also approved measures to streamline the transfer of surplus state-owned land for housing development. These processes now allow for quicker identification and repurposing of underutilized properties, accelerating the creation of new housing units. And then we established some working groups to work on things that still need to be worked on. Several working groups were established to address the critical issues of housing production, like regulatory barriers tasked with identifying and recommending solutions to excessive or outdated regulations that hinder housing development. innovative construction technologies, exploring new building methods and material to reduce costs and timelines, impact fees, reviewing the structure and implementation of impact fees to ensure they support rather than impede housing growth. And just to mention a little bit, the housing production roadmap, I'll just tap on some of the key recommendations, and it really is a well put together report for anybody interested in housing I would suggest take a look at it. So what it does is the report provides strategic expanding investment in affordable and workforce housing across all regions, accelerating zoning reform and streamlining permitting processes, leveraging surplus land and public-private partnership for rapid redevelopment, supporting innovative in construction and modular housing solutions, improving data collection to monitor progress and target resources effectively, and ensuring protections for vulnerable populations, including renters and mobile home parks residents.
Sure. We stop for now.
Yeah, they're having
It's too quiet. It's too quiet.
Yeah. Sorry,
We're having
there was a
issues.
technical issue.
I had it on my lips. I couldn't get it any closer.
You're doing great.
No, no,
I'm just gonna try one more thing.
you were echoing and then there was nothing.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to.
There's the benefit.
Bunch of videos.
I say you don't want to hear.
Or-
Maybe we should just go with the echo.
Well, you have to move it.
No, I might have.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm still near the echo.
Can you still-
Figured it out. You can keep going.
Okay, I'm at my conclusion, so I just got a paragraph. So the 132nd Maine Legislature and the governor have taken decisive action to address the state's housing crisis, passing 22 impactful bills and launching new strategic initiatives. These efforts lay a strong foundation for expanding affordable housing, modernizing land and use policies, protecting vulnerable residents, and fostering innovation in housing production. Continued collaboration among policymakers, advocates, and the public will be essential to achieving Maine's goal of creating over 84,000 new housing units by 2030 and ensure safe, affordable homes for all. And that pretty much wraps up what I have to say about what the state's done in 5 minutes. And is Aaron next?
Hey, can you hear me? Was it working? Did I have it in the right spot? Okay. What? Okay. We're all good? I want to go back and sort of go over where we exactly are now, okay, and where we could go. Because right now, the Housing Committee, which is part of the town, has put together this, convened this, and has reports, but they cannot really become a housing trust or some agency of the government to provide housing without going to the annual town meeting and dealing with new ordinances. So what we're looking for here is a coalition of the willing, those folks who are interested in housing, because the next step is to put together some sort of entity, some sort of group that can go to the next level of actually putting together a plan, actually becoming a trust or an organization that can bring in funds, can put together policies, and can create or subsidize some sort of housing in the community. So we're starting from zero at this point, right? There is no entity, it is no public governmental agency. It's just folks who want to do something, which is always a good start. The next thing that's going to happen is folks who are interested in this will have to get together and create something out of a whole cloth. And this has been done before in this town. You've got, just to give you a couple of examples, you've got the Harpswell Heritage Land Trust, you have Harpswell Aging at Home, you have the 3 fire departments, you have the Holbrook Foundation. Those are all things that got started and are not part of town government. So the next thing to do is, let's talk about how one would deal with the housing situation here in Harpswell. The easiest thing would have been to attach something to one of those entities that are already existing. The Harpswell Heritage Land Trust has no interest in becoming a housing trust, so put them aside. So if we create something out of nothing, this is what would have to happen. A group of folks would create an entity. Any new entity would be a creature of the state. The state of Maine would allow you'd file paperwork and say, we're an organization, and we want to be a nonprofit organization, and our goal is to either work in the housing area and either create housing, subsidize housing, whatever the group that gets together comes up with a mission statement. Once that group becomes a group and deals with the state, files the forms and fills out the paperwork, it becomes an organization. And it's required annually to report to the state what you've done. And there's all kinds of paperwork to do this. But all those other organizations do the same thing. So this is not foreign. The next thing that would have to I suggest we should be doing is you'd like to have a nonprofit status with the IRS so people can give you money. That's another process. It's not a hard process, but it is more paperwork and stuff. I have some experience with this and have volunteered to, once the organization is created. Yes?
I hope that you could give a brief clarification about what exactly housing trust is before we actually start on.
Okay. Okay. I actually have some printed materials for people who might be interested in starting a housing trust. So.
Yeah.
A housing trust is an organization that is going to come up with funds and distribute those funds in a certain way that is going to promote housing. It can be, depending on what it decides to do. It could subsidize mortgages. You could wind up having people who want to buy a house and meet certain requirements the organization comes up with, income, et cetera, that you will provide funds to subsidize that mortgage. With all of the safeguards, and the issue that then becomes that somebody has a subsidized mortgage, they get into a house, it's now worth $800,000, they sell the house and walk away. Well, you can protect against that by putting in the mortgage that what I would suggest, if we get there, is splitting the appreciation, because you want people who are going into the housing to build wealth so that they can buy houses in the future, and you want to return some of that back to the housing trust so that they can buy more things and subsidize more people. This is just one way. It doesn't have to be it's so amorphous at this point that there are no policies. There are other suggestions about what to do. One could have donated land and build rental housing. You could do anything you wanted to that the town feels it needs, that this volunteer organization, if you will, is willing to manage to do. And all of the kinds of things that people say, well, it's so much work, or it's so difficult to administer. those kinds of things can be put off onto other organizations. One could subcontract, let's for the sake of argument, that you give out mortgages at a subsidized rate. You would subcontract with an organization that manages mortgage portfolios. CEI, Brunswick Housing Trust, one of those kinds of organizations, you basically hire them to manage and administer. So you don't have to be frightened of, I'm going to be on this housing trust, I'm going to wind up being a mortgage banker. I mean, all of those kinds of things can be taken care of. The real issue is we have to start with an organization. That organization has to develop some policies that the people of the town, I don't want to say town, the people of the town want. If we have young families that we want to support and get here, then the kinds of housing that one wanted to build and subsidize would, be 3 bedrooms and allow people to, have a family in them. Or if we're saying elderly folks, then maybe we want something else and have group housing or whatever. All those things are possible because at this point, there's nothing. What we really need is, and I want to also address raising funds. That's not believe it or not, it's not the hardest part. There are ways of dealing with philanthropy that makes it attractive for them to invest in a housing trust. So, one of the problems of being over 65, and I'm way over 65, it is it's open enrollment for Medicare and all those kinds of advantages. And I have been getting 5 and 6 calls a night. Okay, put that aside. All right. So essentially, what I'd like to do is open this up to questions, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions about this. Yes, Courtney.
Your mic is on.
Is it? Why, it was off. What kind of people are you looking for that would, I'm Jane Q. Public, so what do you want? What kind of people are needed for a housing trust?
Okay, what we really need is people who have enthusiasm, who want to do this, okay? Because there's some work involved. If the entity becomes a true organization, it'll take out owner and director's insurance, so you won't have to worry about being sued or anything. But we really need people who are willing to put in the energy and the effort and really want to see something like this going, because it's going to be a whole bunch of tasks to get something like this up and running. And to feel comfortable with dealing with their neighbors, and because people are going to ask and question and suggest and be unhappy with whatever you choose. So, but really, as I put it before, it's the coalition of the willing. It's folks who are interested in housing and want to, or interested in seeing this town survive and prosper. No special skills involved. Anybody with special skills is invited, please, but it's not required.
Do you have any particular size in mind? A committee of
whomever. In other words, normally organizations like this, if you have like a number of people, 5, let's say, that's enough to get going. Okay, you're going to eventually have it, and you also, I said you have to invent this out of nothing, but in reality, I have a 78-page workbook here on how to start a housing trust, and bylaws and all of those kinds of things. They're around. We can plagiarize all those things. But yeah, if you got 5 or 6 people, that would be very helpful. And since it's a non-entity at the moment, there really are no rules. So you can do it with 3. When you register with the state to have an organization, you need a president, a treasurer, and a secretary. So if you've got 3 people, you can start something. Having a couple more would be helpful. Yeah.
My question here, let's get back to basics here. What's the point? In other words, we've got a housing committee which is accountable through the citizens of Harpswell, through the select board, and through our town meeting.
Correct.
Who or what is this group accountable to?
There you go.
Who or what is this group accountable to?
At this point, they're not. I mean, who is
Once established,
Okay, yeah,
who is it accountable to?
It's accountable to its board. Because think of this, who is HA accountable to? Who is the fire department accountable to? Who is Holbrook's organization accountable to? Okay? What happens here is the people who are going to, there's no government funds. At this point, I don't think we'll ever get any, well, at this point, there are no government funds available. Let's leave it at that. So this would be philanthropic money, okay? And therefore, people who donate are going to want to know what you're doing and how you're doing it. The thing is that the town itself, through the housing committee or through the selectmen, are not in a position at this point to do any kind of create housing or subsidize housing. So you're going outside government and you're creating basically a philanthropy, if you will, that is going to deal with this. And you want to deal with it and you want to think about it so that it passes smell tests, so that it is something that people can respect and people want to be part of or subject themselves to, because if they're going to rent from it or get a mortgage from it or have a subsidy from it, they're going to want to know that that everything is on the up and up.
One last question then. So what's the point of the housing committee then?
I'm going to jump in on
Why
that.
do you
Okay,
need it?
Sean, why don't you discuss that?
Yeah.
Oh, he's got his own way.
So the reason that we are looking at a housing trust instead of a housing committee is because there have been a couple of opportunities for houses being donated in town in the past couple of years. There's nobody willing to receive a donated house in town. There is nobody who can take a free house and go, yeah, I'll hold on to that and make sure that somebody can live there affordably. That entity does not exist, and it needs to. We cannot lose free housing in town. That is why we need the trust. The housing committee cannot do that work as part of the town. We cannot take on board without going to public meeting. And those opportunities move too quickly for us to wait a year every time. That's why we need the trust, and the committee can't do this.
There are communities that set up these trusts within government, but Harpswell doesn't feel that it has the resources to do that. And since we have direct democracy here, you'd have to convince all those couple hundred folks to vote on it for the warrant. And the explanation and the management of that would be obviously quite difficult, but it's one way of going. But other than that, since there isn't anybody else, you create somebody, you get people who are interested, and they do it, just like HA got created.
Yeah. I just want to add, a little bit to what Sean said and give people a visual example. We had the school, and the town could have, we could have preserved that, but there wasn't anybody to take it. Nobody could take it. So we lost all that land and we lost the school. And that wasn't something that the person who was giving it back was willing to wait a year for a town meeting for us to vote to take it back. So a housing trust will help with those types of situations.
I mean, I do want to say this it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. We're starting from nothing. We're going to create this thing. We don't know what it quite looks like. Trust us. Well, that's not really it's not trust us really. Yes, I'm sorry. Bob, you have the mic?
Is there any towns in the area that have a housing trust or something like this already that you're maybe trying to model it off? Or somewhere similar to Harpswell, that has a program that's implemented already?
I do not. I think Isla Ho has one. But I'm not sure. We'd have to do some research. I mean, that's one of the reasons to get a couple of folks interested in this before you create an entity. There's a lot of research that needs to be done. But unless we have a meeting like this and have people who are interested, then I'm not particularly interested in doing it all by myself.
Yeah, there are several housing trusts in the state. Kennebunk, I want to say, I'm pretty sure Bar Harbor has one as well. There's probably like about 10 or so that exist. Yeah, I can pull you up a list for sure. Yeah. No, there's a bunch of them in the state. They're all, because like Aaron's been talking about, they're all kind of like invented by people. They're all different, and they're all trying to, the problems in Kennebunk are different than what we got here, obviously.
And the people who want to avail themselves of this kind of housing, you're going to have to make some choices, and those choices are wide open. Do you, Bob?
I mean, just as a for instance, we reviewed both Martha Vineyard and MDI for housing trust efforts, and a lot of good information came out of Martha's Vineyard. But the ability to necessarily copy is we're starting from nothing, as Aaron said, and we have our ability to make our own rules and what we want to engage in or what we don't wish to engage in. MDI has had a program for close to 30 years, and I think they've have in their portfolio 25 homes. It's not a panacea. It is a hard road, but 25 homes of younger adults or older adults or whatever we wish to accomplish is still better than nothing. And so, yes, these are maybe baby steps to opportunity, but maybe it's the right thing to do, and I think that's what the Housing Committee has been forthright about, setting up this meeting and starting to get in front of our community to find out where they want to be on this. So, thank you.
Yes, Courtney.
So why should we listen to what you have to say, Aaron?
You don't have to.
No, I want to know I want to know why. Tell them why we wanted you to speak.
Well, I have a very varied background. I'm a finance guy. I've been an accountant. I worked for the Island Institute for 7.5 years, and we did not have a housing trust. We had some other things. I've raised money for things like this. So I have experience with it, and I have said that I have some time, so I figured I would just get involved. So I have experience putting organizations together, and I'm available to do that. Beyond that, I've also said to the Housing Committee, I'm not interested in being the president. I'm not interested in having any office whatsoever. I'm just willing to give my expertise and do a little of the lifting. But I can say that should there be a group that wants to put together an entity, I will help them do that. If they want to discuss policies as to what they want the Housing Trust to actually do, I'll be happy to do some research on that. But it's really going to have to be folks who want to be interested in this. And the other thing that I think is really important is that as we look around, most of us here are of an age where we're volunteering and retired. Not everybody here, but most when these things start to happen. I think it's crucial that some people who really would plan to avail themselves of housing at least get in to start in the start of this. Obviously, there'd be conflict of interest things if they were on the Housing Trust Committee, if you will, and then applied to be for housing. But we do need the input of those families as what they need, what they want, what they feel they can afford, so that you can then design a program. But that's later. The first thing you're going to do is decide there's a problem. We want to fix the problem. What we can do locally is really contained. There's a lot of this stuff should be done state and nationally. And I wrote a paper on that. But for here and now, the thing to do is create something, and then have those folks who have created that something to start to put together a program. And once the program is put together, you apply for the 501c3 designation, you can go out to people who have money and say, will you support something like this. I'm going to do one little aside. Private foundations have to give out a certain amount of the funds that they raise. Otherwise, they have to pay an excise tax to the federal government. So they have to distribute some of the money that they raise. There's something called a program-related investment, where the foundation makes a loan, and that's counted towards the amount that they have to give out. If they get it back, great, they can put it back to use again. If they don't, it turned into a grant, but they still met their federal requirements. I raised $2 million doing that for the Island Institute when they were buying fishing permits. So the money, we got people involved with fishing permits, we ought to be able to get people involved with housing. So these kinds of things are, all of this landscape is out there. We could do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the handout, it says the key to a housing trust is having a public source of revenue that is committed through legislation or ordinance, such as real estate transfer tax.
Oh, okay.
And I know other cities have been successful with that. Is that something?
Yeah,
You said there was no
that is
government
not-
funds.
That
but-
is not relevant here.
Oh.
Because the trust that I took the model from happens to be civic. It's part of a town or city. We're going to be working outside of that because we don't have a governmental entity that's willing to take this on. There's been churches who've done this on their own.
But if a governmental entity within the town did take it on, they could use a public ordinance to fund it.
Yeah, look.
But
if
this would
if-
be entirely philanthropic.
Yeah, that's right.
Because of the way we're setting it up.
That's right. If you can get the town to buy into this, okay, then you're in a situation where you can bond, at low interest rates, and there's all kinds of financial things. But then the town, it becomes a part of the town entity. Okay, it's part of the municipality that has a whole host of other things involved. And right now, based on the information I've gotten from the Housing Committee and the Selectmen, they're not ready to take that leap. I may be wrong.
You've suggested that somebody should get together and do something, and that sounds very amorphous to me. And having been involved in nonprofits over the years, I think that the first thing that really needs to happen for this idea is the Affordable Housing Working Group, which has been working on this for years, really. And I was involved with a town committee back in the 90s that was trying to do the same thing, and it fell apart because there was no interest. But it seems to me the Affordable Housing Working Group could create some direction so that you're zeroed in on not just something, but a thing. Unfortunately, it was the school that got away from us, but that would be a great target. Holbrook's had a great and very precise target that they wanted to go for, and that's what got them going. But if you're just talking about, well, we'll just come up with some ideas around the town about how to get affordable housing going, I think people are just going to look at you cross-eyed.
I would agree with you.
I think that there is a further need for direction from the more affordable housing working group.
Thanks for the segue.
Especially in a data point of view.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. The question is the Affordable Housing Working Group functioning? Do they have they plowed this ground?
The Affordable Housing Working Group no longer exists.
No.
They are disbanded as of the sort of like closing of their report. The Housing Committee is working on this, and I think that segues very nicely to Debbie's sort of like proposed mission statement that we've worked up. I hear you say that it would be good to have a specific like property or project in mind, but I think it's a good idea to be able to not be pigeonholed into any one thing, any one property, I suppose. So let's see what. Thanks, Debbie.
Okay. Am I holding this right?
I don't know, keep talking. Okay, so we have gotten a little bit past some of the things I was going to bring up, so excuse the repetition, but I'm a member of the Housing Committee, and we have been talking about what would a housing trust look like in Harpswell. What are we dreaming about proposing as one of the ways to deal with the housing situation that we have? So just to go back to the start, our rationale for proposing a housing trust is that Harpswell has a severe shortage of attainable housing units. There's very little opportunity for starter homes, for, teachers, healthcare workers, me when I was, starting out in my career, for people to actually be able to live in Harpswell. And the working group report that's on the website actually goes into some of that. The Housing Committee was charged with engaging the community to develop and implement attainable housing solutions. So that's part of our role as the Housing Committee. And one of the methods that was suggested was to start a housing trust, actually to encourage others in the town to start the housing trust, since as a town committee we can't actually start it. But I trust a group of people that would look for the ideas and the funding to create attainable housing. The role of that housing trust would be to acquire, and sorry, these are our ideas. It doesn't mean that whoever eventually fulfills becomes the members of the housing trust can't tweak things, but these are what we've thought of, is to acquire, develop, and sell quality housing attainable by people with low to moderate income, assure that such housing is permanently attainable. One of the issues with a project done here 15 years ago was the houses aren't permanently attainable. So to come up with a mechanism that whatever gets created persists over time. It doesn't go back into the general housing stock. And there's so many, we are happy to talk to people. There are so many little pieces of what you can do as a housing trust and how you can keep things attainable and not let them get out of control and go back into the general housing stock. But at the same time, recognize if you're doing ownership rather than rental, that people have a legitimate expectation that when they own a house and it increases in value, they're going to get something out of that. So you have to do chicken and egg stuff all together. But our wish would be that the housing would be permanently attainable. And then look for other opportunities that might exist, whether it's when the school came up, being able to respond to that. There was another property that also potentially became available, and I think it was Sean that said there was nobody to take it. There was no one who could take hold of that and turn it into something positive for Harpswell. The mission statement that we came up with, and like I say, this is our vision. Obviously, whoever started the trust would make it theirs, but to support and sustain a diverse community in Harpswell by maximizing permanently attainable housing opportunities. So it's not just housing for the sake of housing, it's housing so that we have a diverse and sustainable community here in Harpswell. People of all ages, all backgrounds, all contributing to the community that we have here. And that mission would be a start for the trust to create and begin activities to support sustainable housing, affordable housing. Does that make sense?
What is the difference between attainable and affordable? You need to pick one.
You know, it depends. There's all different definitions of attainable and affordable. Affordable housing is often used when people are talking about low-income housing. And then attainable has higher income limits that are meant to talk about like young professionals and people starting out. And there's nothing that's etched in stone for either one of them. The Housing Committee has come up with a definition of attainable housing because of the stigma that is sometimes attached to the term affordable housing, but it's not black and white. It's like everything. I think that would be one of who the target audience was for the activities of this trust would be one of the things that had to be decided on. And there could be multiple populations that are targeted. For example, people talk about elderly people in Harpswell who can't downsize because there's not a smaller house that they can purchase or an apartment they can rent, but they don't need the housing that they have. So elderly residents could be one target group. Another could be, young professionals, what I mentioned earlier. Another might be the people that are working for companies in Harpswell, that work for the builders and the sewer guys and everybody else. So it could be separate ones. And yeah, affordable, attainable. Don't get stuck on it. Any other questions about what I've talked about? Because I'm going to hand it back over to Sean, who's
Yeah, great.
going to sort of facilitate final questions and ideas and thoughts and talk a little bit about the next step that we've been envisioning.
Yeah, the questions have been coming up as they've come up, and that's great. And I guess that this is time for sort of like other people's thoughts to be heard, or what are you curious about? What does this idea make sense to you? Where might you like to see? What might else you like to see in a housing trust? What does the idea sound interesting? Like it might be a viable option in town? Just throwing it out to folks who have taken the time out of their day to show up to this to see what you all are.
Do you have any timeline in mind for like how soon you'd want?
Yeah, if you want, like I could do a meeting tomorrow, probably. Yeah.
We'd like to have a meeting on January 7th of anybody that's interested. I think it's
The 5th.
5th, sorry.
January 5th, we're going to do a follow-up
Thank
for
you.
people who have been interested,
See?
who have, had a moment to percolate over on the idea and maybe do some more research on what housing trusts do, look at some of our resources that are on the internet. But yeah, so January 5th, 2026 at 5 o'clock, we're hoping to do another public
Get together.
meeting, get together.
Discussion.
Yeah, probably more of a general, a facilitated discussion to see what people in the community might actually want to do. Because like the Housing Committee is helping to, put this idea out there, and I guess that's a chance for people who might be the Housing Trust to get together and sort of talk a little bit. That's the next thing we got on the schedule, though. Yeah.
The housing trust idea is just a vehicle. The housing trust idea is just a vehicle. It doesn't have to be a housing trust. It has to be something. It has to be something that becomes an entity because you're going to deal with money. So sooner or later, you got to put together something, and housing trusts are traditionally the way this has been being done. And all of the nitty-gritty stuff, the policy making, or what goals you want to reach, that's going to get hammered out because there's nobody here to say. I mean, I have my own feelings about which group we should focus on, but we need more input than just me. So I wouldn't pretend. So what happens is you need to have more folks involved.
I think someone else had a. No, a couple of people.
Just curious that if someone sees this sometime later, or anyone in the room tonight, what email address or how do we contact a person to say they're interested?
Yeah.
You have a sign-up sheet.
You can contact Margaret at
Planning office.
I'm in the planning office, and I'm the staff liaison for the housing committee. And my email address is planner@town.harpswell.me.us. But you can just stop by the office or give me a call, especially if anybody didn't get to give us their contact info, but they want to be included in future emails or meetings. Yeah, reach out.
Can you say it one more time? What was that?
It's very long. planner@town.harpswell.me.us.
yeah, thank you.
Could I add one slight correction, and not to disseminate bad information, but we did approach the land trust, and the land trust emphatically supports whatever happens with the housing trust, but they at this time do not wish to be part of that, and they will support us 100%. So I want to make sure that they're not walking away from us. They're just not wanting to deal with it currently.
Well, their mission doesn't include housing.
That's correct.
Yeah.
They have all the right to say no, which is fine, but they're going to support us.
Yeah.
Support the housing trust as it comes to fruition, if it does.
Yeah, and like Aaron said, it doesn't have to be a housing trust. This is the sort of like, in our minds, one of the better sort of like models or structures or whatever that will be able to help. In my mind, a lot of this is just saving housing in town. Like, we can't afford, like I was saying earlier, we can't afford to lose housing that is offered for by donation for affordable housing or attainable housing. We can't afford to lose it. And so, yeah, we can build housing, we can, act as mortgage or whatever, but we need an entity that is also able to, yeah.
Yeah, let's assume that somebody wants to donate a house, and this entity exists, and they're willing to take it in. Well, of course, now you have to renovate it and bring it up to code and do all the kind of good stuff, which takes money. So therefore, you're going to have to go out and at least solicit or get volunteers. I mean, like the Haw construction crew does thing. All those kinds of things have to be arranged and can be done. But there has to be an entity to do it. And that's where we're calling this the housing trust. Right.
I want to add what Bob was saying. I'm glad you brought that up. I know that there are land trusts throughout the country that are realizing, hey, to be sustainable, we're getting close to having all the land that we can keep maintain and that's available. Hey, but why don't we get into housing trusts? So there are land trusts that do step up. They're not ready now, but it looks like in the future, maybe that's a possibility.
Did you still want to say something? You had your hand raised a couple times. You couldn't get the mic. Okay. Okay.
I'll speak from personal I used to, in the construction world, we did a lot of work for the Audubon Society. And the Audubon Society wanted land. And they said that they, multiple times a year, would be offered houses that they wouldn't take or couldn't take. We need to have an entity that's ready, willing, and able to service our public. And if that's a way for us to create some housing for some of those well-deserving, to make our community more diverse, I'm all in. I will raise my hand to be a member of this trust if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
I'm pleased that we're going to have a little pause period before the January 5th follow-up meeting. And what I'm getting out of this discussion, particularly with the issue that Spike raised, which I think was somewhat similar to the issue I raised, perhaps the Housing Committee, which I support 100%, but I'm beginning to think that this thing is going to take over. I mean, it's going to have assets, it's going to have the ability to raise money, and it's not accountable to anybody. Now, HA's not accountable to the town, but I think by and large that's okay. Housing is a bit of a hot-button issue in this town, and to create an entity that has no accountability thread somehow or other at a policy level, I think that needs to be worked on. And I very much support the efforts to do this, and by the way, this example keeps coming up. If we're creating a trust who is just going to willy-nilly say, oh, God damn, somebody wants to give us a house, we'll take it. Anybody who takes a house without thinking about what the policy is and what it really means, I mean, that doesn't solve your housing problem. That creates a maintenance problem. So I think there's policy issues that require accountability threads back to the town and to the political entity of Harpswell, and this is creating a sort of a wild card on a hot button issue, and I worry about that.
Can I just say?
Let's,
So, and Aaron probably respond a little bit better, but I hear your concerns about that. What I imagine is the Housing Trust will be accountable. I mean, they're going to have to legally be accountable with like a 501c, like the Land Trust is, like HA is, like Holbrook's is, like, we have several entities underneath this thing that are accountable. They're accountable for the finances and stuff. So they'll have policies and procedures put in place on how they can take a house, what they can take, what they can do, all of that. It won't be just an off the cuff process. What it does is, like I said earlier, it will, if we had already had that, say, and I'll hypothetically use the Land Trust again, if they would have been able to take the school, the town of Harpswell would still have that school and that land for whatever it was going to be turned into, used into, or whatever.
not
we wouldn't have lost
the legal
that.
entity, the town of Harpswell, but the
Right.
town of
So,
Harpswell.
having a housing trust does lots of things. It does allow us to preserve housing. It's not just about building housing. It allows a place for maybe even a partnership with the land trust. Say it's got 15 acres on it, but 5 acres over here have a couple of houses on it, so the land trust can't take it. So maybe they can divide. It's a lot of opportunities that we don't have right now for housing and to preserve housing. And we, as a town, have to figure out how we're going to address our housing issue. We're having discussions right now, tonight in Topsom, over the fact that we might be losing our last school. And once that happens...
Cheryl, I'm going to steer us back into the conversation.
Okay.
Just one quick thing. When I say accountability, I mean accountability outside its own borders. Of course, any NGO is accountable to its own board of directors, but it can pretty much do what it wants within that circle. I'm talking about accountability to the town of Harpswell, to the people of Harpswell, and that's where I don't see the... So if that could be spelt out, I'd just feel a lot easier thinking that at the high policy level, this isn't a group that just decides that it wants to build some high-rise apartments someplace, and as long as it can get the money, that's okay.
That can't happen.
But you get my point.
I do. I understand that. But they won't be able to build outside the codes, the zones, the setbacks, the...
Okay, but this issue, it's a valid issue.
It is.
But the issue then is you'd have to convince the town to take responsibility for building providing some form of attainable, affordable housing, whatever we want to call it. And right now, the town is saying, we don't have the ability to, we don't want to do it. Our citizens have enough things to do to pay taxes on, and we don't want to be involved.
I get the feeling that the housing trust, whatever they propose, has to follow town ordinances, though, on building. So that, no, well, that would prevent, even if the, the housing trust went haywire, they could not build high rises.
But that's not, but.
Town ordinances, but if the state comes in and creates a state law that supersedes the town ordinances, as they've done, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah, but that's not the problem as I see it, because you're going to be subject to whatever laws, regulations, ordinances, whoever's building. The real problem for accountability is somebody says, hey, your son-in-law got in a subsidized house and my kid didn't. I mean, it's going to be those kinds of things that are going to have to be steered through by having some very transparent policies and decision-making and requirements, et cetera. That all has to be built before you can give out any of this, make any benefit to somebody. And those things, there are models for that.
We don't have to write everything from scratch.
Right. But yes, there is certainly that accountability. The only way to get accountability to the people of Harpswell totally is to put it in town government. And then you put it on a warrant, and you wait a year, and then you all vote on it. Otherwise, it's not part of the town. And
Why have a housing committee? Just have a trust and invest it.
well, the housing committee did the research, plowed the ground, and came up with the conclusion that they want to go further, but they're not able to.
There are other aspects of trying to implement the Affordable Housing Working Group's report that we have been tasked with that exist outside of the scope of a housing trust. That would be stuff like ordinance regulations and maybe, I don't know, Margaret, I feel like you had a couple of other.
ADUs? Our ADU material.
Oh, sure.
We prepared, yeah.
Yeah, developing and information about how to do an ADU. That wouldn't be something that the Housing Trust would do. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we can't do the job that a trust can do, and there's plenty of other stuff to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a 6 o'clock appointment. I'm not leaving because I'm unhappy. And I really wish the housing committee great success, and I don't understand the trust yet, and I want to, and I'm looking forward to further discussions.
Good, come back.
Appreciate
Bye,
you
Bob.
showing up.
I'm
and,
going
yeah.
right behind you.
That's, it's if we're coming up on 6 here, I guess. What?
Are there any questions in the chat, Amelia?
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry?
Oh, questions in the chat? Nope.
Okay.
JC. Yeah,
I'm standing out here holding a microphone. Can I use it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Great.
can't help myself, Sean,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just listening to thinking about how the land trust got started
Yeah.
35 years ago. Before you walk out, Spike.
Yeah.
And it was called the Harpswell Heritage Trust. And it took on a number of homes that wanted to put easements on them. And that's how it got started. And it has progressed now to where it's the land trust. And it has done wonderfully preserving land. And the town feels very fortunate to have land preserved in that way. But here's a case where we are a town worrying about having housing for the workers and people who are here. And I think this is very exciting. But I was just thinking about some of the, I don't want to say pushback, but serious questions that comes out about the advisability. And I wonder if those same questions came up 30 years ago with the land trust. Just a thought as I was thinking about it. In spite, I've known you for years.
Can I have a comment?
You can, because you were on the trust when I first got on.
To Bob's point about accountability, a land trust, for instance, has a very specific mission. It also has a very specific set of bylaws which guide what it does. And the land trust is also part of an organization called Land Trust Alliance, which helps land trusts to make sure they stay within their legal boundaries and are doing the work they're supposed to be doing and not jogging around and doing other things. And there was a case long ago in Freeport where a land trust, I guess it was the Freeport land, I don't know who actually it was, but they had a property and they allowed somebody else to build on it. In other words, they allowed the easement to be transgressed on. And that land trust was taken to task by other land trusts and said, you need to, reclaim that land and get the property put back the way it was. Because if you allow that to happen, then people are going to start pushing on easements all over the place. And then you have the Wild West could open up. So it became very, very quickly the legal ramifications came to play.
It sounds like they violated
and a housing trust. What Mary Ann was talking about was there were a few properties, the Tar Eaton House down in Harpswell Center, there's someplace in Cundy's Harbor. They originally were sort of historical take-ons. They weren't land they weren't land take-ons. They were, we need to save this house, and the Tar Eaton House is a great example of that. There are other properties that have, for instance, the Spy Rock Farm has an easement on it. It's a large piece of property, but there's an easement with regulations on what can happen to the house. So there's not a concern really if you set up a nonprofit with the proper mission and the proper bylaws and the proper acknowledgement in the larger community that this is what we do. When you try to do something that you're not supposed to be doing, people are going to call you.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's an issue. I think the issue is what exactly you're going to do. What is the first thing you can talk about? Senior, affordable, attainable, rentals, ADUs, all these different things. You need to pick one as the founding project in a way. Not a specific project, but this is what we're going to try and do. And I'm sure that's what happened with HA, which is now, feeding people lunch from all over the place. So, that's not what they started out to do. So, anyway, that's my 55 words.
Thank you.
That's good strategy.
Yeah. I mean, like Mary Ann was saying, these things get started by groups of people who have a concern that they feel like needs to be addressed. Many people in town here are aware that we need places for people to live who don't have, $2 million or whatever. Yeah, I'm very lucky to be in town. And, I would love for some other younger folks to be able to be here as well. And this is one way that I see us being able to do some of that. And yeah, in the same way that I'm sure there is a land trust organization, there are absolutely groups of housing trusts that have ethics, sort of like standards. Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for coming out, everybody. Please spend some time thinking about how we might do a housing trust in town. If you might be interested in participating, we need all sorts of people, and it's great to hear all the different ideas. Please be in touch with us either on the form in the back or email Margaret address that she mentioned earlier. I think that's going to do it for us tonight.
January 5th.
January 5th is our follow-up meeting at 5 o'clock